The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Good morning, everybody. That's right. It is Thursday, July 31st, and today is, this is great. It's National Avocado Day. Yeah. Just so you know, too, by the way,
Avocados?
Yeah, well, just so you know, too, Trump did sign an executive order making avocados known as Americados, by the way.
God, I hope you're joking.
No, I'm 100% serious. Yeah, I'm so serious about that.
That second time you were joking too.
I was out of it.
No, they're Americados. I have a tree in my backyard, and we grow Americados over here.
Male or female tree?
It doesn't matter.
I was gonna say I'm tired of all these people making declarations about how things are when they don't even know whether or not they're.
Well, I thought cannabis was one of the only plants that has sexes.
You will, even if you have a female avocado tree, you will get avocado 0 unless you have a male tree.
Oh, well.
I just want to focus on real policy. No more declarations. Let's do real policy.
It's also National Chili Dog Day today, you guys.
Okay.
National Mutt Day. How do mutts get a day? That's so ridiculous. It's got to be like some SPCA bullshit.
Make sure you rescue.
Who isn't a mutt? Come on, dude. Who isn't a mutt? It's called hybrid vigor. Stop it.
It's also National Raspberry Cake Day. And just by the way, Dale, I'm a purebred. I'm purebred with awesomeness, okay? Just so you know, just for the record.
Yeah. Well, some people believe the earth is flat, so I don't know what to say about that.
Well, I don't. I know that it's round. It's a sphere. Well, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website, www.highat9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And I do want to make a quick mention that if for any reason this broadcast is cut off, make sure that you are following us on X and Rumble, as we will continue the show there in lieu of any disconnection here on YouTube. And we are going to kick it off with Miss Shaun Salvaje. She's a veteran. She's a mediator. And, of course, she still is stuck in the military because she calls milligrams MIGs. That's right. It is none other than Miss Shaun Salvaje.
Thank you, Jason, for that introduction. Yes, I do. It's MGs, MIGs, whatever.
Yeah.
It's fast. Let's go. I guess once you're in, you're in for life. The way it is, I don't. Moving on. The Texas Senate. So I got to get it back in the zone. The Texas Senate has, my story is coming from the Texas the Texas Tribune. The Texas Senate did advance, as we predicted yesterday morning, SB 5 to the House. So they have advanced the bill to ban THC again. The Senate's decision signals another potential standoff with Governor Greg Abbott, who vetoed a similar ban earlier this year as he called for more regulation instead. So I'm kind of still baffled at how this conversation is happening because the governor did specifically veto with the instruction to regulate. But we'll press on. The Texas Senate on Wednesday preliminarily approved its second attempt to ban hemp-derived THC, setting up a showdown with the House where hemp industry members say they'll be getting more support, and that is for sure. Senate Bill 5 by Senator Charles Perry, a Republican out of Lubbock, tentatively voted 20-9 to advance the bill to a final note. And I will note that Senator Blanco, a Democrat from El Paso, was, I don't feel on the right side of this, even with the concerns that he shared. So maybe we could collect ourselves a bit and regroup. The bill would create a blanket ban on products containing, and I'll explain why. The bill would create a blanket ban on products containing any detectable amount of cannabinoid other than cannabidiol or cannabidiol, CBD, CBG, which are non-intoxicating components of cannabis. Okay, yes, good journalism, but also what we're missing here, what is so key in what this bill does is that in isolate form only, not naturally occurring. So this would be CBD and CBG isolates only because they would have to be isolated. You would have to isolate out all other molecules. This is a big comma that we need to make sure news outlets are starting to pick up because this is what makes it essentially a ban bill, even for CBD and CBG. So that line of argument that no, we're providing access through this is a whole crock of bullshit. They know, and they are aware of this. They know that these would be isolates. They're educated on it. So the bill would eliminate the majority of hemp products, including those that are legal under federal definitions. This is the other issues that Senator Perry continues to argue based on federal cases, saying that it's already been made illegal, but those cases are still pending. And we saw a lot of this with Rand Paul's actions. They're still debating this at the federal level. The difference is he's conflating this with the state's opportunity to self-determine. Doesn't mean, well, I want you guys to argue about that. We'll finish covering what happened in Texas because I bet y'all are going to have a lot to say. So Perry on Wednesday repeatedly emphasized that the intent of hemp legalization was never for THC to be widely available to the public, and that most of the products being sold in Texas as hemp, in his opinion, should be considered federally illegal. He also criticized people who say there are medical benefits to THC, even citing Charlotte's Law and knowing of its existence, supporting the teacup program, but then saying that there's no medical benefits to THC. It has never been approved for that use. So it's kind of, his arguments are like having their cake and eating it too, and kind of circular and illogical at best. But Texas has never gotten its medical treatment from gas stations over the counter. And that's fair. There are medicinal avenues that we could go through with the healthcare system, but we do actually buy Tylenol on the shelves in our convenience stores. So there are over-the-counter applications that we're missing here. The Republican lawmaker also pushed Governor Greg Abbott's suggestion to regulate hemp like alcohol, saying law enforcement, they just don't have the manpower, y'all. We just can't possibly legislate or regulate. We can't do our jobs because we don't have the manpower. That argument just drives me insane. I don't care how you can't do your job. Prohibition sets a bright line for enforcement. He said, if I were alive in the 30s, would I have been a prohibitionist? I probably would have, knowing what I know today. So thank you, cat's out of the bag. Yes, we're still arguing about prohibition here in Texas, and in very much a 1930s kind of way, especially when you add the context of this redistricting and flood relief. This is kind of those 100-year cycles. They really speak to my heart. Senator Jose Menendez, a Democrat out of San Antonio, said that many people, and he gave testimony about a veteran who's a personal friend of his who uses THC, and how he's worried that with us shutting down a hemp and cannabis industry in Texas and then waiting the 2 to 4 years for THC to stand up, that consumers are going to go to the illicit market. So they're starting to see the traction on that. I don't think they fully see the opportunity to have the hemp and cannabis industry serve as not just a stopgap for a total market collapse, because what Senator Perry isn't considering is that, okay, go create the medical oligopoly. Let's say you do it. and everything passes and you get teacup, but you still have operationally, we still have like 2 to 4 years before those products launch. You will prematurely also collapse your teacup market because everyone will go back to the illicit market. And the illicit market will contain legacy operators who are not bad actors. Those hemp operators who you just shut down, who are also not bad actors. They tried to go through the regulatory pathways through hemp. And then, yes, your criminal enterprise actors, who some of them might have more money than your mom and pop. So they're really making a bigger mess than we need to out of this. And that's, God bless Texas. So Senator Menendez did testify to these issues. And before the debate, Senator Nathan Johnson did introduce SB 53 and 54, which are a legalization and decriminalization set of bills. Hopefully they will introduce identical bills through the House, so that way they can follow the same strategy SB 5 and HB 5 are doing, because there are some whispers. So this is for any of our locals in the area, or if you're not so local, but you want to be in Texas and participate in this, there may, I don't know yet, it's not yet confirmed, but there may be a hearing in the House for public health on Wednesday. It may be confirmed by now. I don't know, guys. I haven't checked the website today. This is just what I'm hearing. Check the website, verify, please. I don't rely on what I just told you, but if there is, be prepared to testify. I'm giving you a little bit of heads up, guys, because it's really hard to schedule your life and do all this shit. My concern with teacup, this is from Senator Menendez, is that the teacup program we have today is almost so expensive and difficult to access for so many that they've been forced to hemp. They're substituting cannabis with hemp, which we know it's the same. And I don't think that's the best option, but it's the only option they have. So we need to answer more questions when it comes to the House legislative sessions and these hearings. We need to really focus in on how hemp and cannabis can be a bridge for teacup, how we can further teacup, maybe expand it in different ways to let that, okay, so they pontificated for a bit, and Senator Perry said, we're going to have the 15 licensees, and we have the list of 150 who've already been vetted to an extent. And that is true. There were, I think, 151 applicants. Now they need to whittle that down. So it sounds like they're going to pull from that selection pool based on what Senator Perry testified. Now, remember what is said in the legislature and what's executed in the practice. So they can sometimes be two different things. So we'll see. But what if instead of the 15, I want to know now, based on the debates and the arguments that were presented yesterday, so can we have a conversation about building a bridge, allowing retailers to help where teacup can't expand? Nathan Johnson's bill introduces home grow, which very much gives the consumers power to grow their own plants next to their basil. They know exactly what, pesticides have been used, and hopefully they're not using pesticides on anything they would smoke or consume. Be smart. This is a farm food crop. It can be a farm food crop, especially the leaves, even with the THCA, not decarboxylated, the acidic properties for gut health in the leaves, and makes it really good salad. So there's a lot of potential here, and they're starting to see all of that, but it's a very difficult and in-depth conversation we need to have. And as you saw yesterday, based on the testimony of Senator Perry, he really feels he's on the right side of the federal law with this one, that these cases have already been determined, is kind of how he's presenting the arguments to the legislature. And when it comes to your testimony as a veteran and your personal experience, well, he just doesn't think you're of sound mind enough to make those determinations. And I found that highly offensive, to be quite frank. We're sound enough to go and fight our nation's wars. I think we're good enough to decide if a plant is going to be the choice we want to make versus the stacks of prescriptions you wanted doctors to give us that you authorized, by the way. Y'all let this pharmaceutical industry get as insane as it did. And now we have an avenue to help heal those problems by creating a middle ground with hemp and cannabis, helping to get good actors into a regulatory pathway through accessible means, and expanding medical access through the teacup program. And yes, helping some of those not, hopefully big name, big brand, big box pharmaceutical companies, but I know that they're going to have their slice of the pie. But those like laboratories that are actually invested in developing pharmacological products, I would love to see that. He specifically said in his testimony, if we don't ban it, then we are allowing access, and he simply won't stand for it. So it'll be an interesting fight in the Texas legislature. We definitely need folks to show up. The public health hearing may be held on Wednesday. Public health will be a whole different battle than state affairs. So what folks out there need to keep in mind is the Senate and House State Affairs committees are specifically focused on state affairs. That's why arguments regarding illicit market economics, all of these things are applicable. They are not applicable in public health, but remember, this is a public health committee. Their focus is going to be on public health issues, so we need to address those nutraceutical concerns and arguments, and then we need to focus in on the medical stuff, especially the claims that Senator Perry is making where he's conflating suicide rates with cannabis use, schizophrenia rates with cannabis use. And we've seen no increase in rates of schizophrenia despite a significant increase in American consumption of cannabis. So we need to come prepared to actually have not just those arguments that we've already heard on the floor, but also a lot more debate and nuance on the public health issue where you share your personal story, but also why hemp and cannabis could be the bridge between the medical market and a future that is truly dystopic and will be completely fucked if this goes through. So that's what I got from you in the middle, trying to help everybody. And then I will say also for Nathan Johnson's bill, it was a very progressive bill, including home grow. But like the hemp operators are understandably want to raise those potency cap limitations, or perhaps the idea is not to have any limitations at all. And that would really crush the illicit market, because if the consumer just knows what's in the package and then per serving in the package, they can make educated decisions. But I do think that would require a little more public education and awareness behind just cannabis and your endocannabinoid system in general. So back to y'all. Tell me what you think about what's going down in Texas, and also how you might see it playing out on the federal level, because I think you're going to start to see these arguments mirror each other.
Well, yeah, we are. I mean, we covered the story yesterday about Rand Paul getting the blockage in the Senate in regards with them trying to remove hemp out of the farm bill, and so that was a great deal. And we know that he's trying to push up for 1% THC instead of this 0.3% THC based off of dry weight, and so that would be fantastic for the industry. But I just feel like Texas is just, they obviously failed the first time going around, and they're trying the same thing, and that's kind of is the definition of stupidity, is when you keep doing the same thing over and over expecting a different result. And I just feel like they need to evolve a little bit on this issue. The governor clearly called for a regulated marketplace, and what they're trying to do is regulate the market out of existence, and that's not what the governor is calling for, even in the first place.
I thought it was kind of funny how this senator said he wouldn't stand for it, but Greg Abbott will. I don't know. That just some irony struck me for a moment there. Go on.
I see what you're saying there, Nate.
Is the cops are out there saying, "Oh, we don't have the resources to monitor if this becomes legal." Well, they don't have the resources to monitor and enforce a prohibition either. So you keep passing laws.
Hold on, let him finish. Let Dale finish. Let Dale finish.
They keep passing laws they cannot enforce, okay? And if you go behind closed doors and talk to people who work in criminal justice, and this is cops, prosecutors, that if you try to act like somebody's parent, which we call in loco parentis, and say, you can't do this because I told you not to, and it used to be 8%, but we got more than 8% people smoking weed. So if that many people say, yeah, fuck you and your rules, we're going to do it anyway, now you can't enforce that prohibition. Okay, we've gone way, way beyond that with cannabis and hemp. So they keep dragging up the same old stuff, causes schizophrenia and all these other, it's like, that's horse shit. Problem is they learned from alcohol prohibition. You don't recognize an out of control prohibition climate, and you end up with the mafia. Okay? The cartels are the ones running cannabis across the country right now, and we don't want them. And nobody wants to look at the cost of trying to keep this prohibition in place. We're all like, hey, I'm your dad. I told you not to do it. I'm going to spank you if you do it. Well, fuck you. You're not my parent. The government's not your parent. We have popular sovereignty here, and the voters need to stand up. Okay? They play games in legislatures. It just drives me nuts. That's why I hate politics, because they're lying sacks of shit. They can't get anything done. And the voters out there need to step up, because they're voting with their pocketbooks right now, and hemp is clearly winning. So is cannabis. And that's where they don't want to recognize that, because, oh my God, if we allow this, it's going to ruin Western society. Every place it's been legalized now, the sky hasn't fallen. And that's what they really don't want to recognize. That adolescent use is steady or down. Highways aren't, covered with blood because people driving high and shit like that. Just stop it. We got to find a way to give this market to people who are regulated and tested. Okay, but get the hell out of the way and let the market control the illicit market, and stop trying to monitor this like I'm your dad and I told you not to do it, because that clearly is not working.
Mm-hmm.
Dale, that's what was, and I want to get your perspective on this as well, because what's blowing my mind is, so I sat in the first hearing, and I intentionally sat next to one of their police officers testifying, and we had a conversation. And I asked him about, well, what is going to be, they are arguing that there is no money or resource to enforce. So the ban makes it a yes or no. And I want to understand how much more then is it going to cost DPS for all of the arbitrary possession cases that they're going to get, that are going to backlog the entire system, which is already overwhelmed. The case clearance for criminal cases is already low. Like, it's already overwhelmed. They're already backlogged. How do they think prohibition is going to not explode the illicit market? And Senator Perry on the floor said, well, he has no mind for that. They have not projected that, and it's not his concern, but his concern is banning things right now. So what do you think about that? I'm trying to figure out how to get these law enforcement numbers, or looking at broken windows policies and how they don't work, but it's hard to argue with because it's so illogical, and it's what do you got?
It's not illogical. It's cop math.
No, it's an argument that is not inside of the working cops. Working cops, when they show up to some scene, they're looking for people who are dangerous, okay, who are aggressive, who may be armed, and they're looking for people that are committing crimes of violence, and that's where they're trying to target their energies. When they show up and someone's smoking weed, and it's like, holy shit, paperwork for this is a pain in the ass, and they're not really a threat to anybody. Mm-hmm. This is what people don't understand about the working lives of cops. It's a dangerous goddamn job, okay? And when you show up someplace to pull a car over, you never have any idea if that person's going to be cooperative or if they're going to shoot you. Okay? And so when someone's smoking weed and there's several kids standing around smoking weed, it's like, oh, Jesus, you guys just leave, please. Mm-hmm. We don't need to come in with an enforcement action. Just go away. Stop this on the streets. That's how it should be handled. But no, they want them to arrest them. Okay? And then you get the clog of the system. And they're cutting them deals where, okay, we're going to let you know, we're going to give a slap on the wrist, maybe it's a community service. And it clogs up the system for people that need to be in the system. People who are sociopathic, who are so disagreeable, they'll steal your shit, they'll beat you up, they'll smack their wife, they'll steal from you. I mean, those are the people we should be targeting. Okay? And so when you clog it up with people that who gives a shit, You had a little too much to drink on Saturday night. You're on your front porch and you're causing trouble. Why? Turn your music down. Leave us alone. This is not serious crime. And that's where we really get the system disconnect here. Someone that's out hawking fentanyl, that's a serious criminal, because people lie, cheat, steal, flat back. They do anything they can to get it. They don't do it with cannabis. And cannabis does not cause aggressive behavior that the cops need to be concerned about. With a bag of brownies, they can control a room full of stoners. You go into a room full of drunks, you better be packing. because those motherfuckers will beat you up.
Yeah.
Someone smoking weed, they're not a problem like this. And you just can't break through to people who are out there, trying to get their front page headlines and bullshit by talking to real line cops who's like, I don't have time for this shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for people who are out there to hurt others, and I want them off the streets.
Interesting.
That was the other issue, is that, so then they say it's for the kids, but then my concern is, then why are we criminalizing the kids? And actually, after the yesterday, I did have a moment with one of the mothers who is on the prohibitionist side. I try to be so polite to them, but they really they won't have it. And so we did have an exchange where I told her, I was like, ma'am, I'm trying to keep your kid out of jail. Bottom line, you give us your testimony of this experience, but imagine that and jail time. Imagine that and legal fees. And the other thing with the cannabis use disorder is often these kids are taking check rehab. I'm addicted to cannabis, so they can avoid jail or juvenile time. It's like, guys, this is a cycle we need to end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not fixing anything either. That's the real bottom line, because the insanity is they continue to do the same damn thing. And it's clear it's not working. But here, let's gear it up again. Let's go out and arrest more people, make this illegal when you can't even enforce prohibitions now. And then the cities out there will go, hey, we're not going to enforce it. It's our lowest enforcement priority. And the people in Austin just shit themselves. Oh, my God, you can't do that. You can't take that away from us. Why not? Our community decided this is a very low enforcement priority. Why can't they decide that? It's because it's control. And they want the cops to be the control mechanism. And the cops should be controlling sociopaths and very disagreeable people and those who will use violence and steal your shit. That's where they need to focus. And the rest of this is it's stupidity. And it drives me nuts when you say this to lawmakers. And you'll ask them, why are you going to pass another law you can't enforce? And they'll scratch their head and come up with some horse shit. And they still go forward. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you're not fixing this problem by continuing these prohibitions. We need to learn from history. Mm-hmm. If history teaches us anything, we don't learn from history. There you go.
That part is true. AJ, you any final thoughts on this, AJ?
Yeah. One thing I admire about extreme left-wing people is a movement they started during the last election cycle. A lot of extreme leftists registered as Republicans in order to vote in the primaries. And I think that, and when you have an extreme right-wing or left-wing stronghold in any particular state, I think that it's a good idea to register in the major parties so you can vote in their primaries. And I think that that's a great way, because you're asking a guy like Perry to evolve, but he doesn't believe in evolution. So he's not going to evolve. People need to actually vote, these people out and bring in more centric people into politics.
That was one thing I noticed is the arguments that were cited in the article are out of date, disproven, and 25 years old. I remember hearing those in the 90s and the early 2000s, and I remember them being disproven then. And it just makes me wonder where these guys are kind of coming from. Like, and from a political scale, it's a dinosaur way of thinking. And I feel like it's, could go on and on into this, but I feel like it's so telling onto the person themselves when they're telling things and freely telling things, apparently testifying to things that have been clearly disproven dozens of times over. It's kind of shocking to hear that it still comes up and that somebody would throw their weight behind that. Like, I don't like being wrong. Why would that person's got cameras on them? What the fuck are they saying that for?
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we're going to roll into our first commercial and we are going to be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs. I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you know you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
Get their shit together.
Yeah, there's. Oh man, you are so right about that, Shaun.
Well, so do the Republicans, but I don't think either party's going to have that.
I think the Republicans got their shit together more than the Democrats do, but nonetheless, Dale.
Well, that ain't saying much.
I think it's saying a lot. I think it's saying a lot. But man, I have a kind of longer story for this, so I apologize. But it's super interesting and very timely, especially following Shaun's story this morning. So just that's my forewarning. But former Sid Miller allies told police the AG commissioner feared the DEA and told a friend to get rid of his marijuana, you guys. That's right. Miller denies wrongdoing after allegations surfaced during an investigation into one of his aides who pled guilty to bribery. The agricultural commissioner has not been charged with a crime as of yet. And a former friend of Texas Agricultural Commissioner Sid Miller told the Texas Ranger that in 2022, Miller asked him to dispose of 3 bags of marijuana cigarettes and gummies because he was afraid that the DEA might find them on his property. At the time, the friend, Michael Hackney, was living in a motorhome on Miller's Steppenville Ranch, where Miller was licensed to grow hemp. In a quote, he says, "I've got to get rid of this. I've had it at the house, and if the DEA comes, I can't get caught with this stuff," Miller said. According to Hackney, he says, you do with it whatever you want. Get rid of it, but don't leave it here. Hackney added he was really, really nervous about that deal. And the Texas Tribune obtained a recording of the Texas Rangers 2024 July interview with Hackney through an open records request to the Texas Department of Public Safety, but has not been able to confirm whether Miller was or has ever been under investigation by the DEA or any other law enforcement agency. He has not been charged with a crime, and a Department of Public Safety spokesperson said Miller is not under active investigation by state police. A DEA spokesperson said the federal agency could not comment on any ongoing or past investigations unless they are fully adjudicated in the courts. And in an interview with the Tribune, Miller flatly denied the accusations in a quote, "If I had marijuana cigarettes and gummies and I thought the DEA was going to investigate me, I'm damn sure wouldn't have given them to anybody else to get rid of. I'd have just gotten rid of them myself," he said. "I would never do that, and it didn't happen." Law enforcement records reviewed by the Tribune show Miller entangled in a morass of accusations related to his hemp farming operation made by former associates, and the records were from 2 separate state investigations, neither of which targeted Miller, and one investigation was into bribery accusations against a top Miller aide, and the second was in response to accusations of illegal coercion that Miller made against one of his own high-ranking Texas Department of Agriculture employees. Miller accused the employee of trying to blackmail him with threats of explicit photos. Miller dismissed the accusations made to law enforcement as lies and from a disgruntled former employee and former friend, he said. DPS has never reached out to question him about the claims, and recorded interviews conducted both during investigations revealed people close to Miller believed his hemp farm was under scrutiny by the DEA. That included Freddie Vest, a former agricultural department director who oversaw the hemp licensing program and who Miller accused of blackmail. DPS investigated the claim but did not charge Vest with a crime. During that investigation, Vest told officers in June of this year that a colleague had informed him 3 or 4 years ago that the DEA had contacted had contacted the agency asking for information about Miller's hemp farm. When Vast relayed the information to Miller in early 2022, he said Miller grew angry. In a quote, "I said, Sid, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I told you I'd never lie to you, and I never hold anything back from you. I've heard that there's been a DEA agent that is inquiring on your hemp program," and Vast recounted to the officers. Miller said, "What's the DEA?" I said, "Drug Enforcement Agency." And he went back home. He got mad at me for telling him or that I knew about it, Vest added to the officers. Miller confirmed Vest told him the DEA was looking into his hemp operation, but said he was wrong. And in a quote, "Freddie is a damn drama queen, and he's full of it," Miller told the Tribune. "I checked out his story, and it didn't check out. It never happened. I never, ever talked to the DEA. They never stepped foot on my place." Miller, a Republican in his third term in the state-elected office, was registered to grow hemp in Texas between 2020 and 2023, and under a license granted by his own office. He was one of the hundreds of people who applied for that opportunity after state lawmakers legalized growing parts of the cannabis plant in 2019. As long as it did not contain more than 0.3% of THC. Let me quote, "I said, Sid, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I told you I'd never lie to you, and I'd never hold anything back from you. I've heard there's been a DEA agent that's inquiring on your hemp program." Freddie Vest, former Texas Department of Agriculture administrator, and Miller planted 10 hemp crops at his Stephenville tree nursery through 2022, including varieties called Sweet Wife, China Blossom, and AC/DC Record Show. State lawmakers in May voted to ban the sale of substances containing consumable THC in Texas, citing concern that they are dangerous to people's health. And at first, Miller opposed that ban, arguing it would be harmful to Texas farmers, though they ultimately supported it. Governor Greg Abbott vetoed the ban in June, calling for a focus on regulation, and lawmakers returned to Austin on July 21st to once again tackle that issue, among others. Scrutiny over hemp licenses. When Hackney spoke to the Texas Rangers about Miller's hemp business, the Ranger was investigating Miller's close political consultant, Todd Smith. And Smith was arrested in May of 2021 for soliciting up to $150,000 to guarantee prospective growers supposedly exclusive hemp licenses from Miller's office. Licenses to grow hemp are unlimited in Texas and cost $100. And after the indictment, Miller told reporters that he parted ways with Smith following his arrest. He later said the investigation was politically motivated and that Smith did nothing wrong, and Miller has denied involvement and was not implicated in the case. Smith pled guilty to commercial bribery in 2024, a few weeks before his jury trial was scheduled to begin, and about a week after Miller was subpoenaed to testify. Smith agreed to 2 years of deferred adjudication, meaning he would have to follow terms of probation, but then could have his charges dismissed. A few months after Smith pleaded guilty, Miller hired Smith as chief of staff of the Texas Department of Agriculture, and Smith did not respond to a request for comment. Hackney's interview with the Texas Ranger, in which he described Miller asking him to get rid of the marijuana, is embedded in Smith's 180-page investigative file from DPS. And in a quote, "Sid shows up at my motorhome and has 3 bags of product. And by product, I mean marijuana cigarettes that were in little cigar wrapping gummies and so forth," Hackney said in the interview. Hackney responded and said, "What in the world is this?" He told the Ranger, but he did what Miller asked, he said. Hackney's motorhome had been parked on Miller's property in Stephenville for about 5 years at the time to help manage his horse and cattle operation, and he told the Ranger Hackney, a former calf roper, got close to Miller, traveling around the country and showing horses with him. He said 2 had a falling out back in 2023, which resulted in Hackney moving off Miller's property, and Miller said he asked Hackney to leave his property because he wore out his welcome. In the interview, Hackney told the Rangers he witnessed Miller tell an employee at his nursery to make sure if they had anything illegal on the property to get rid of it. And once Miller's house, he said he saw Miller smoke marijuana. Oh boy. Miller said he told employees to only grow legal hemp on the property and reached reached by the Tribune, Hackney said he stood by his statements to DPS, but stressed that he only came forward because he was asked by the Rangers to interview about Miller's relationship to Smith. He was told by DPS that his statements would be confidential. In a quote, "I did not want to hurt Sid, and especially his family, in any way, but I did answer my questions to do the best I could with the knowledge I had," Hackney told the Tribune. It's unclear whether any investigators took any further action in response to Hackney's claims, and asked about them. The DPS spokesperson initially said Hackney's interview was included in a report that was submitted to the Travis County District Attorney's Office and directed further requests to that office. A spokesperson for the Travis County DA's office said they do not have a record of receiving a copy of Hackney's interview, and hours before publication, DPS sent an additional statement saying it did not send Hackney's interview to the district attorney's office after it was determined that it had no investigative value to the Smith case. But there was a second investigation, you guys, because nearly a year after Hackney was interviewed by the Rangers, Vest, the employees fired by Miller after 10 years at the agency, got a knock on his door from 2 DPS agents asking to talk to him about a recent termination from the agricultural department. In the interview, Vest said a former assistant commissioner, Walt Roberts, once told him that he accompanied Miller to a shop in Bestrop, where Miller dropped off multiple garbage bags of his harvested hemp in exchange for 2 large garbage bags of black tubes with individually rolled joints inside. Oh boy. Roberts said Miller took his hemp down there, and what this guy was doing was spraying it with synthetic THC, turning it back into marijuana, Vest told law enforcement. Spray packs. Miller denied to Roberts he was doing anything illegal and remarked that there's some college kids that like to have this, Vest told officers. Roberts confirmed Vest's account to the Tribune, adding that he felt uncomfortable being present for the exchange, and he declined to answer further questions. And Robert was hired by Miller when he first took state office, and Roberts has publicly disclosed he pleaded guilty for a federal felony and misdemeanor for his role in a campaign finance conspiracy in Oklahoma in 2003. Miller denied he ever sold or exchanged his hemp in Bastrop, and Vest was interviewed after Miller reported him to DPS and accused him of threatening to expose inmate pictures involving Miller, and if he didn't fire certain employees at the agency, according to a written request from Miller's office from DPS to investigate the incident. In a recording of that DPS interview, Vest told officers Hackney had photos of Miller that could be incriminating. The Tribune reviewed copies of both photos, and one photo was of Miller laying next to a blonde woman on a bed smiling, and Miller told the Tribune that it was a sick woman lying in a hospital bed who he took a selfie with. The other photo was a screenshot of what appeared to be Miller's own Facebook story post of a woman naked on a bed, but only her backside is visible. Vest told police this woman was Miller's wife, and Miller told the Tribune he was unaware of this photo, and Miller's wife did not respond to a request for comment. Vest told Miller about the photos in May, but didn't tell him who had them, and despite Miller's repeated requests for more information, according to a recording of their conversation that Miller secretly recorded and sent to DPS. When Miller fired Vest and reported him to DPS, he submitted his audio recording and transcript of the conversation as evidence, and the Tribune obtained copies via an open source records request. When Vest tells Miller about the photos, Miller asks where the photo came from and tries to guess who has copies of the photos, according to the recording shared with DPS. In that recording of Miller and Vest's conversation, Vest said that he had known about the photos for a while, but had previously convinced the person not to publicize them, but the person was more recently considering making them public and wanted Miller to fire Smith and other agency head. Hackney told the Tribune that he never intended to release the photos, and Vest insisted in his DPS interview that neither he nor Hackney ever directly threatened Miller, and he had tried, he said, to get Miller to stay away from Smith for years. And in a quote, "I don't show these photos to anyone to extort anything out of Sid or anything," Vest told the officers. "And since I was terminated, I haven't. It's not a vendetta for me against Sid Miller." Vest declined to interview with the Tribune, and the agent said in the interview with Vest that there was no evidence that Vest tried to blackmail Miller and closed the case, and Vest was never charged with a crime, and Miller told the Tribune he was still considering further legal action. But there's a big political storm because Miller is gearing up to run for re-election for a fourth term next year, and so far he's garnered at least one primary challenger, Nate Sheets, founder of Nature's Nate's Honey Company. Miller previously served in the Texas State House from 2001 to 2013, and since he was first elected agricultural commissioner in 2014, he's repeatedly weathered political controversies and criticism. Miller has frequently faced backlash for posting misleading and false information on his political social media pages, and in 2016, Miller came under fire for using state funds to travel to Oklahoma to receive what he called a Jesus shot, an injection that a doctor in Oklahoma City claimed could take away all pain for life. Miller later reimbursed the state for the trip, and Travis County prosecutors did not pursue charges. In 2017, the Texas Ethics Commission fined Miller $2,750 for sloppy campaign accounting, and the next year, the Ethics Commission fined Miller $500 for using state funds to travel to a rodeo in Mississippi after an investigation found the primary purpose of the trip to Jackson was personal, you guys. Well. Man, this sounds like one big cow and pony show, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. It's a hot mess in Texas.
Really like your voices, Jason.
Oh, I'm glad
really
you like that.
Voices.
Especially you being from Texas, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, it was funny. I mean, at the beginning of this story with the drama and everybody, it just sounded like a bunch of snitches just diming each other out. If I was Sid Miller, I would divest. If you are at all involved, and you are probably likely under investigation.
But, you know what, Shaun?
Go ahead.
All of this all makes sense because if you remember in the beginning of the whole hemp debacle and debate in Texas, Sid Miller was very, very pro allowing these products on the shelves and everything else like that. And then all of a sudden, later, a couple months after that, he totally shift position and totally was all about the ban all of a sudden. And I'm betting you it has something to do with this.
I couldn't speculate on that, but I will say when you're if you surround yourself with, you know what? It was funny until we got to the part where they are using a photograph of a woman who none of them are to continue perpetuate this issue. And that's when it made me realize these are a bunch of men who are lacking personal accountability, it sounds like, and willing to throw each other under the bus, taking deals, and maybe too arrogant to realize that they might be under a bigger magnifying glass than they anticipated. Didn't we talk about this yesterday? Whether you're on the trap side or you're if you're in, just because you're the commissioner doesn't mean you're untouchable, especially as a commissioner. That you gotta, that's, get your shit in order. I can't believe this is such a freaking pain in the ass to deal with when we are actually trying to talk about real policy. I am furious that some woman's photo is out there and that these men that we're not that's private and intimate. It was blasted on Facebook and now it's being used as leverage. If you're going to do it, if you're going to be
the photos don't even sound that incriminating though. Like they're not even like they're like super weak sauce in my opinion.
Naked weak sauce or not, it's not. I am so tired of men using women as leverage. Like, it's not acceptable by any means, and it was laughable until we got to a point where it got like laughable because they're all diming each other out, or whatever that mess is whatever that mess is, and they can deal with it themselves because you make your bed, you lie in it. But then when we have these other issues brought in and we're not taking these investigations seriously, like, I don't know, these guys could be taking deals and making shit up, fine. But using a photo of a woman without her permission in an intimate moment to blackmail her partner.
Whoever took the photo is who owns the photo. So it's whoever took the photo is who owns the photo. So regardless of who's in the photo, that doesn't matter. That's the law. That's how it works. Whoever takes the photo is the person that owns it. That's just how it works.
I love to hear from everybody else because
my problem with all this is that we have a Paleolithic nervous system in the days when they can video, take photographs, and record every goddamn thing you do when you're under the influence of your stupid Paleolithic nervous system. Men are horny. They'll fuck anything that'll stand still. They like taking pictures of it. Men and women will lie about all kinds of shit.
Mm-hmm.
When it's recorded, you can say all you want, but we got you recorded.
Yep.
So this should be something that every politician should be paying attention to. If you're out there letting your tallywag run your life, like too many of them are, and people are taking pictures and recording shit, at some point, that's liable to come to light.
Yep.
Okay? And how you handle it tells a lot about your character. Okay? And the people in this don't have any character.
It's like an episode of Anthony Weiner Visits Texas, Dale.
Well, Anthony Weiner's the Democratic example of a piece of shit. There's a whole, the Epstein files are like the classic of what's out there.
Yeah.
It might come back and bite a lot of people on the ass. Okay? And that's just, it happens everywhere. Men are hound dogs. Women will take advantage of hound dogs. There's photographs, videos, all this shit out there. Why would you put it out there? Because you're a piece of shit. But you know what? Human beings are pieces of shit too often. And here, what are we going to do? We're going to deal with this or what? My advice, vote them out of office. If they exhibit themselves to be this low-life pieces of shit, vote them out of office. But they're still there. For reasons I don't really understand, they're still there.
Nate, AJ, anything to comment on this?
You first, AJ.
I just really enjoyed listening to that. It was great Southern accent you put on.
Oh, thank you so much, AJ. I appreciate that. I'm super. Yeah.
You sent me right into Red Dead Redemption, man, and I really appreciate that. So.
Oh man, that's
talking about yesterday.
I'm telling you guys, if you guys want to get anything done in Texas, you guys need to enlist J.R. Ewing to come lobby for you guys.
Yeah, what a shit show that was. I didn't know. That was, too weird to be fiction right there.
Yeah.
That article that you read through.
And there's there's audio files and everything to back all these allegations up. So it's like the proof is in the pudding. Yeah. You got to face these kinds of things head on.
Those are statements that were taken by DPS in an investigation, though. You have to also remember, people say shit when they're like, I'll give you this, you give me that.
I get it, but that's
I'm not defending any one of these. They all sound kind of scuzzy. I'm not going to defend them, but let's be mindful. They're DPS statements that were taken. When you get taken in, they ask you questions. Everything is on the record. I don't know why he thought he had privacy. It would be used in a court case as evidence. What? But you have to also take with a grain of salt. These are unproven, unverified statements by people who sounds like they took deals because they were going to be convicted of other crimes.
Emmett Otter in the chat, he's saying, telling you Jason should do a remake of the Perry Mason show. And I think he's referring to in this story. I think that would be hysterical. Do you remember Perry Mason, Dale? I know you do.
Oh, I do. Yeah. He won every case at a preliminary hearing.
Yeah, he used to crush it. He was the man.
Well, if you believe all that shit, yeah, it's great entertainment.
It was great entertainment. It was. I was thoroughly entertained as a kid with Perry Mason. I thought it was a great show. Oh man. All right. Well, on that, we are going to keep this train rolling. We are kind of over time today, so I do apologize, you guys. But coming up next is Mr. Dale Schafer. Dale has been an attorney since the Reagan administration. He has represented physicians, hospitals, insurance companies, cops, corrections officers, and for the last 25 years, he has specialized in cannabis law. He served a 5-year federal prison sentence for helping medical marijuana patients and managed to save his law license. He's blunt. He doesn't smoke them because they're ratchet. They make your breath stink and top of other things stink. And he's honest. He's unconcerned with public opinion, your opinion, and anyone else's opinion for that damn matter. And he will show you how he can defy gravity by pissing up a rope. That's right. He is none other than your favorite T.O. Loco, and you can now find him at his own law office at the law office of none other than Dale Schafer.
Hi, good morning. I've got a story this morning out of Marijuana Moment. It's a theme I've talked about more than a few times over the last couple of years, and it involves taking away gun rights from people who use cannabis. This comes from Ben Adlin on the 29th, and the headline is Proposed DOJ Rule Says Marijuana Users Likely Wouldn't Be Eligible have gun rights restored. Now, this is proposed rulemaking. We have a federal gun statute, which is what we call the enabling statute. And those enabling statutes then allow rules to be made which interpret the statute. And this is one of those rulemaking interpretations of the statute. And what they're trying to do is categorically disarm people who use cannabis. And if you remember last year when I railed against the Biden administration trying to say that people use cannabis are dangerous, they steal for their drugs, they don't secure their guns properly, all this other kind of horse shit, I was pretty critical. And I'm pretty critical of this because this, again, is horse shit. What the Supreme Court has done with the Second Amendment in the latest rounds of rulings, start with the Bruin case and then the Rahimi case, and these took us back to 1791 when the Second Amendment was first passed. That's when the Bill of Rights dropped into it. They took a look at that point. How were gun rights handled? Okay. And back to the Heller case in 2008, the Supreme Court says you can keep guns for your own self-defense. That's your traditional use of it. There's sort of where we're starting from. If we have gun rights, they are there in large measure for us to be able to protect ourselves and our families and our home and things like that. So what we have now is a split all over the country. And in most cases where courts have taken a look at a categorical disarming of cannabis users, they have struck it down. If you go back and look during the late 1700s and clear through the 1800s, people were not disarmed categorically. If you were found to be a lunatic or, crazy, or you were a hopeless drunk and you were dangerous, then based upon individual facts about you, you could be disarmed. But no group was categorically disarmed. That's the problem the government has. Now, historically, we didn't get our first real modern gun prohibition until 1969, when I might point out the Black Panthers showed up wearing guns, and it kind of freaked out people here in California. It's like, oh my God, we can't have those black folks showing up with guns. So this is when Richard Nixon was just becoming president. We got our first federal gun prohibitions, and they had to do with being sentenced for a crime that got you a sentence more than 1 year, which was basically a felony. They disarmed all felons. And their thought was, well, if you're black and you're carrying a gun, you're probably a felon. Not true, but that was the target. They also made marijuana illegal under Nixon because they wanted to go after the hippies, and heroin because they wanted to go after blacks. There was a lot of things that went on with that. Now it carries forward to trying to, to gin up hysteria against people who smoke weed. Okay. And it's just not there. From a public safety standpoint, cops and the average person is not concerned that you're going to go out and do a mass shooting after smoking weed. It's just not there. Okay, you can't point to examples of it happening. So try to gin up this categorical contempt for people who smoke weed just isn't working. The bigger problem they have is that the majority of the United States now allows people to use cannabis, whether for medicinal, recreational, or both. So the majority of places you can go to allow you to use cannabis. Okay. So at the federal level, to try to disarm everybody who uses cannabis sets up another one of those situations where you can't enforce these kinds of prohibitions. So it ends up being pretty selective. And you get disparate treatment, which then brings up all of the traditional problems with racial minorities being targeted. Okay. So this is a real slippery slope. And my feeling is based upon what the federal government, the Supreme Court especially, has told the government, is that unless you can go back and show us historical precedents for categorically disarming groups, okay, this shit ain't going to fly. Okay, so we will see. And there's also another sort of window of hope I have in here. The Supreme Court will take a look at the category, okay? Cannabis is in Schedule 1 for reasons that are scientific horseshit, okay? And so we can never get a court to look at the reasons why cannabis is in Schedule 1 And the reasons are it has no currently accepted medical value, and the abuse potential is more than we're ready to accept under medical supervision. Those are the two categories. And number one, it's got accepted medical benefit because, Marinol is an isomer, synthetic isomer of THC. You can get a prescription for that. Okay? So to try to say, THC is illegal. No, I got prescriptions for Marinol when Molly had cancer. She couldn't keep it down, but you can get a prescription for it. Okay. So that's bullshit. Okay. And Sue Sisley proved that cannabis, THC-laden cannabis, is helpful for PTSD, and it's accepted treatment now. So that's done. And it is, the abuse potential for cannabis is 10% of less of people who ever touch it. With all the other drugs of abuse, including alcohol, it's up 25 or more % of people who touch it. They develop a substance abuse disorder. And most of us who have been around people with cannabis use disorders kind of raise an eyebrow and go, no, you're telling me that you're going to go rob a bank to get a bag of weed? No.
Yeah, right.
Okay. You're going to be out selling your body at the Mustang Ranch to get, some concentrates? No. You don't buy it. Okay. So from a factual standpoint, it's not supportable. And see, I used to enjoy being in front of a jury talking common sense, because you can just lace in so many examples of common sense, and they're looking at people going, you're a fucking idiot. You're trying to convince us of something that my grandma wouldn't buy, and she didn't like weed. Okay? So there's a lot of problems in this, and I'm still hoping the Supreme Court, and maybe, Clarence, don't leave the court or die before you can do this, tell them the 10th Amendment hasn't been taken away. States have the right to control what happens inside their own borders, okay? And we need to throw this Raich case and the Wickard versus Filburn case out and take away some of the federal government's power to micromanage your lives because something in your life may have crossed a goddamn state line. That drives me nuts. So I'm going to throw this back at you guys. I can rant all day long. Not going to make this any better. I think it's chicken shit. Government should not be allowed to do this, and I just hope SCOTUS throws the whole damn thing out. Back at you. What do you think?
I totally agree with you. I hope SCOTUS throws this whole thing out, because it sounds very unconstitutional as far as their argument of what they're basing this on and their talking points for this deal. So I'm totally with you on this. This sounds, they would, to me, in order for this to actually happen, they would have to rewrite the Constitution.
Oh, that, if you don't like the Second Amendment, my response is an amendment.
Yeah.
Well, that's never going to happen. Well, okay. Is that my fault? The Constitution is amendable. But enough people want to take away your gun rights, they can go try to amend the Constitution. I don't think it has a snowball's chance in hell of passing.
I don't either.
But you can do that. Otherwise, you're just, pissing and moaning. And I tell you what, I was taught growing up, that if you point out a problem and you don't bring forth an objectively reasonable solution, you're just whining. Okay. So come up with a solution. We all know the problem. There's too much gun violence out there because, as I said earlier, we have a Paleolithic nervous system. Okay. Back when we were throwing rocks and sharp sticks. Okay. And now we have all these weapons, and we're still as ill-equipped to deal with our emotions as we were 50,000 years ago. We're expected to be what? Okay. You give we've watched recently, somebody will walk into a building because they're pissed at the NFL and just start fucking shooting people. You can't stop that, okay? Because you can't get guns out of people's hands. We need to deal with mental health in different ways.
Exactly.
And, smoking weed does not give you a mental health diagnosis. So just stop it.
Yeah, there's no way they would have to figure out impairment. So what if you have I'm sorry, the veterans with PTSD don't have a right to self-defend. I'm also thinking about like those female veterans out there, or domestic violence cases, or even we just had a cannabis operator, a hemp operator here in Texas who had a break-in. And I feel like I told y'all this story last week, because that's when it happened. She had a break-in. She's an elderly woman. She knows how to fire a gun, and she took care of it and defended herself. And that you want now, if she's taking her CBD gummy or some kind of edible for her wellness, no weapons for us. Are you out of your mind? Like, there's no way, not in Texas. It wouldn't, and I think they actually did already address this in Texas, that they're not supposed to do that. But we are seeing that there are some cases of confusion, and I'm sure Dale will agree. The legislature will make rules, but then it's up to the judiciary and the actual enforcement of these rules. And sometimes the judges, they just are like, well, I see that the legislature said that, but I'm interpreting it this way. This one's very clear. Like, your Second Amendment right is a fundamental American right that goes all the way to the beginning, to the revolution, y'all. Like, that's a big hell no.
Exactly. Support 2A, man. I'm a big 2A supporter. What do you guys say, Joe?
I love guns.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Shoot 'em up, bang, bang. Nate, you any thoughts on this?
Just, I'm waxing philosophical at the moment and just, wondering and thinking, because most of the stories today have really come down to a central theme of what are the costs of prohibition for cannabis? What are the difficulties that's wrought not only on our lives, but on people in general? What's the amount of waste? What's the lost revenue? What's the everything? And it almost right now is playing out like an anthology to me. I don't know if it's the same for you guys right now, of just example after example after example of just why this is just such a bad idea to demonize it. And it's not even like we're just paying attention to the news. We're not even trying to create this idea or image, but I see it clear as day right now, just all of the different reasons why a prohibition against cannabis is a bad idea, and all of the disruptions across society that it creates, especially here in the United States, and I'm sure in other places as well. And yeah, why? I mean, that's where I end it. Why?
Fair enough. Well, on that, we're going to roll into our next commercial, and we are going to be right back.
I'm Cole Preston, and today I'm at Blue Island Beer Company for the premiere of my mini documentary on legalization policy in Illinois. I've been following cannabis policy since colorful Colorado legalized it all the way back in the day. And when my home state of Illinois decided to legalize it, I just became enamored. I wondered, what would it actually look like? If you'd like to see how Illinois fell short in achieving meaningful reform in their cannabis policy, you can watch my mini doc now at colememo.com/minidoc.
Are back, you guys. Stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com.
I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that, they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
We are back, you guys, and coming up next, it is the creator of Sour Diesel, even though he doesn't want to admit it. He's an asshole, and his name is AJ. That's right, it is none other than Mr. AJ Sour Diesel.
Hello. This is a familiar topic.
Yeah.
Channel 12 News of Augusta, Georgia reports that Georgia lawmakers reevaluate medical cannabis hemp regulations. Georgia's medical cannabis and hemp industries are once again under the spotlight as state lawmakers begin reevaluating how the state regulates the sale and production of those products. Nearly every U.S. state has legalized some form of medical or recreational marijuana. While Georgia legalized medical cannabis use a decade ago, the state remains one of the most restrictive in terms of who qualifies and what products are available. Lawmakers are gathered in a packed committee room at the state capitol on Tuesday to discuss how to grow or restrict Georgia's cannabis industry safely and legally. The focus is on two specific sectors: hemp-derived products such as CBD and low THC oil permitted for medical use. Roughly 13,000 Georgians are registered for Georgia's low THC oil program. One of them, Yolanda Bennett, told lawmakers the current products are not effective enough to manage her chronic pain. What we get here is something, but it's not what it should be, Bennett said. Currently, 14 dispensaries in Georgia are licensed to sell low THC oil. Judson Hill, who represents one of those dispensaries, argued that available medical products are often less effective than over-the-counter hemp items. He voiced support for expanding the program to include faster-acting products like cannabis flower and inhalables. Someone with stage 4 cancer or severe epileptic seizures, they need that immediate relief, he said. What we're offering now takes 30 minutes at best to kick in. But not everyone is pushing for expansion. Several parents testified about the dangers of high THC products. Two Georgia mothers shared emotional stories of how their underage sons were able to obtain potent cannabis products illegally. His life ended before it began, said Jennifer, one of the mothers. Another, Mary, warned he had a frequent buyer number in their system at the age of 17. Also in attendance was State Rep. Derek Jackson, a Democratic gubernatorial candidate. While not on the study committee, Jackson is sponsoring legislation that would legalize recreational marijuana use and create a fully regulated cannabis industry. When you think about alcohol, beer, and other products, we already regulate those, Jackson said. We just have to make sure we encourage and empower the consumer to be responsible. The Legislative Study Committee is expected to meet several more times over the coming months. While no formal decisions have been made, lawmakers could draft new cannabis legislation ahead of the 2026 legislative session. There we have it. Very similar to what's going on in Texas.
Yeah. Wow.
Vote them out.
Yep, I'm pro-regulation all the way. It's when things aren't regulated is when shit happens. I think that we're more than mature enough to have a regulated industry and to be able to cite any instances of bad actors or the opportunities that regulations by, unlike the DCC, by people who aren't maniacs. So, take that as you will, but this is avoidable through regulation. People citing regulation as being the way to go against because of these issues and crying, hear the children. I mean, every time I hear that, it's such a red flag to me to just say, okay, what's this person's angle now? Like, okay, what of the children? All right, I know I've got to look at, sometimes they even Streisand affect themselves. I'm not even listening until they say, what about the children? I'm like, oh, this motherfucker. Anyhow, that's my 2 cents.
Well, regulation is great, but there's like intelligent regulation, and then there's just endless regulation. There has to be a fire.
I've dealt with the DCC in the worst ways, and I've seen the shitty, power-hungry, short man syndrome version of regulation, and I truly believe that as humans, just as we can create awesome institutes of learning and science, we can regulate cannabis in ways that make sense, are limited in the right ways, allow people to, just like you can brew your own beer, you can grow your own weed, and everything is pretty much good to go. And sure, a few taxes need to be collected on it. And sure, we should make sure that it's safe for people consuming it, because why the fuck not?
Yeah, we just gotta hire the right people. You gotta go ahead.
There's still a prevailing attitude. This is somehow going to bring down Western civilization. And you just cannot break through that. I mean, I've been in meetings, public meetings, where somebody from a church jumps up and starts screaming and yelling. Okay. And it's like, okay, now what do we do? Because the entire meeting comes to an end because, they have, you offended me religiously by bringing this up. And I say that because I know a bit about the history of how this came about. And it came about along with, making opium, and especially morphine and cocaine illegal, and alcohol in the first decade or so of the 20th century. It was absolutely racially based, was racially investigated and racially punished. And the federal government stepped in and, tried to prohibit all this stuff. And since then, they have not been able to enforce the prohibitions. And when you look at what happened, it ain't rocket science. I mean, I studied this 50-something years ago in undergrad, that if you pass a prohibition and your public is not going to have it, what do? You get wholesale disregard and disrespect for law and order, and you can't stop it. And it hasn't changed to this day. So when somebody's talking about all these things, you go, okay, show me the empirical evidence, the objective factual evidence that the children are being harmed, that there's blood in the streets. Show me where all this is. And they can't do it because it's their emotional truth. And you know what? Quite frankly, fuck your emotional truth.
That's right, Dale.
I went to prison, because of somebody's fucking emotional truth, not what I actually did. So I get kind of heated about this because it's like you're talking to a what do you got, an IQ of 82? And what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yep.
Cannot you connect dots here and keep doing the same thing because, my lament is my mama told me it was going to be bad, so therefore my mama's never wrong. You can never change your mind, even though you're just flooded with empirical evidence that proves you're wrong. It's part of our Paleolithic nervous system. Here we are. We believe in shit that's objectively not true, but man, we'll die on that hill.
Yeah,
they call it room temperature IQ nowadays, Dale.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting name for it.
And it really is, it really does help direct not only maybe some of the people uttering these, tidbits of ridiculousness, but where some of the people here, amongst, everybody in this virtual room right here and everybody listening, it might seem like, yeah, this is ridiculous, but I mean, to half of people out there, this must make perfect sense. And that's just dumbfounding.
Fair enough. Well, we're going to keep this train rolling. We're going to roll right into our final commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, I left one, And I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where will I even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
With you, man, and we are back, and we are going to roll right into Mr. Nate Winokur. Nate Winokur is the founder of Bell Costa Labs, a lab that was unjustly targeted and harassed by the California DCC and subject to all kinds of persecution and whatnot, and it is none other than Mr. Nate Winokur.
They are still on a warpath. Keep your eyes open, but the word is that they just struck another lab this morning. With what's already a backed up market. Like ever since they hit us, they're the biggest lab. Not only it has have they weirdly eased off, and things like THC, which, THC going through us was always throttled. We didn't bump anything up compared to the entire market. People would typically go to us for normal numbers. If you got anything nearly considerable or high with us, it was normally some type of a almost a mark of honor, like, hey, look, this is what I got through Bel Costa. And now if you look at the California market, when the state does this thing where it looks like they look away, you see the numbers kind of just creep up, and that's happening again. And not only that, they've taken away a lot of the throughput in the market. From what I understand, the turnaround time in the market is slowed down to about 60-70% of what it was. And now if they're shutting down another major lab, they're going to be throttling and damaging the market even further. So we'll keep an eye open, because that's probably going to be a thing pretty quickly. So I don't want to say too much before I have the actual article in front of me, but everybody keep a lookout for that. Fucking DCC, right? Mm-hmm. What we've got today is another good example of government overreach. Speaking of, this out of Minnesota, Lea City Council blocks first non-tribal cannabis dispensary, a move at odds with state law. They are not supposed to do that. They're not allowed to do that. Jacob Schlichter received the first state cannabis license to open a non-tribally owned dispensary in Minnesota. He secured building space, renovated it, and paid a city fee to open his doors as soon as the city approved his registration. The final step in the process. Jason, you would know amongst everybody how absolutely expensive that is, and how much money he would have put into that. I mean, insane, right? And probably from his own pockets. But in a surprise, the Lea City Council rejected his plans on Monday, creating a setback that puts the city at odds with state law. Schlichter, whose business, The Smoking Tree, is now on hold, said he was frustrated with the decision, which he said came at the 11th hour. It kind of feels like they're moving the goalpost at the last second, he told WCCO on Wednesday. The motion to approve his business failed on a vote of 3-4. During the meeting, opponents raised concern about the legal framework approved by Minnesota. Approved by the Minnesota legislature, which gives cities some tools to regulate cannabis businesses, like where and when they can operate, and restricting proximity to parks and daycares. But law prohibits local governments from banning cannabis retail stores from their communities. There must be one dispensary for every 12,500 residents. Lea adopted a limit to have 2 businesses in their city and set other ordinances related to cannabis businesses. Quote, I do not like the way the state legislature and the governor has rammed this down our throats with very little say in the whole process, all because they're hungry for more revenue, unquote, said Rich Murray, the mayor. Schlichter said he understands the concerns and wants to continue to work with the council to find a resolution. He already paid the $500 fee to operate and thought Monday's action would be perfunctory with a little discussion. I'm kind of shocked because it seemed genuinely like the city council had very legitimate concerns with how the state handled everything, Schlichter said. But perhaps there's a better avenue to address these concerns that doesn't end up intentionally or unintentionally making me, a local small business owner, collateral damage. City staff shared with the council that denying Schlichter a permit to operate runs afoul of state law and could open the door to lawsuits and endanger $6 million in state funds the city receives in local government aid. There are potentially real consequences, said Ian Rigg, the city manager. In a statement, the Minnesota Office of Cannabis Management acknowledged the situation, but said that the agency, quote, does not have legal authority to compel a local government to comply with the law, end quote. That leaves Schlichter with the option to sue. He did not say that he plans to do that, expressing discomfort because litigation would be costly to the city and therefore the taxpayer. I've had many other licensees reach out to me and say, I'm kind of scared now. What if my city council votes me down after I jump through all the hoops and pay for my city registration? And now I have to hire an attorney to prove my point to get my license, he said. The issue is up for discussion again at a city council meeting on August 11th. So far, state regulators have issued 8 licenses, with others going through the final steps as Minnesota's legal market begins to come online 2 years after the Minnesota legislature approved marijuana for recreational use. So the anthology continues, guys. There is one more solid example of a step between government overreach going against the will of the people and wanting to ultimately run things under their own programs, regardless of how this was actually intended to work. I'm really curious to see what everybody else has to say, although to me, this seems like just one more really solid, strong example of why of ways the government has absolutely shit the bed on properly helping to regulate cannabis.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, this is the thing. This is supposed to be, if I'm correct, this is one of the Native American licenses that were allowed to be able to expand into 3 different retails outside of their reservation. Am I correct on that, Nate?
I can't confirm that by the article itself. I know I've heard that with regards to what's going on in Minnesota. I did not draw that comparison. I'm afraid that could be very correct.
I think that is the case for this.
That.
I think that is the case for this. Is that this is a native one of the reservations licenses, and they were allowed by the state of Minnesota to be able to open up in municipalities, and then all of those licenses that open up in those different municipalities, they would be subject to the regulations under Minnesota's law, and so there would be all track and trace and everything else like that, and yada yada yada.
I wish that happened more often. The fact that it's being discouraged is another level of mind blowing. I hadn't put that together.
Yeah. So go ahead, Shaun.
If that's the case, so we're in Albert Lee. The thing, Minnesota is making progress, but on the local level, I think folks forget Minnesota's still kind of conservative. I know most folks see it as a blue state, but there are pockets of conservatives. I could see how on a city council level this is happening, and this is why when I would have to look at the legislature, what they actually wrote into the Minnesota bill, if the cities have that authority. Because one mistake that we've made in states where we've legalized
California
marijuana, THC, is you let the municipalities decide. We've been discouraging that as much as we want municipalities to be able to tap into any revenue that is generated for public works. When you allow them to limit it by municipality, you can't actually supervise or watch the growth of the market, because you create these weird pockets, and then you create so many contradictions. You make people who are really trying to do the right thing, good people, go wrong. And they're not even trying to. They're not trying to break the law. This guy clearly did everything right. And if they're tribal, even more, I don't like this. Because if it is an original license held by a Native American or a tribe in Minnesota, that heritage and history is big, and their rights are pretty strong at least up north. And so they should have, if they were approved to do this and they had all of the paperwork and the licensing, I think that it's on the city before they can just shut people down. Maybe the city needs to have a lawsuit instead of forcing the people to sue the city first. And as far as not wanting to sue, I'm so sorry, but it's cannabis. You're going to have to invest some dollars into suing or getting another outcome arbitrated or something, especially if you're talking about city council, because that is a level of that's that small town politic, and you still have to do a lot of conflict management there to get people to see reason, because sometimes they're just they're committed to the bit, and they're not going to see another way unless you get other people involved in the conversation. So it might be worth litigating. That's kind of the playbook down here, is that we get as far as we can with the ledge, but we always know that the judiciary is the next step. And people don't feel guilty about using the justice system in the same way that they use it against us. If you can and you have the means, do it. So hopefully they'll be able to pull up those resources. I would recommend suing the city.
Local control screws everything up, Dale, every time.
Well, it does. And from the big, 30,000 foot 10th Amendment is the equivalent of local control.
Mm-hmm.
And the federal Constitution specifically states what the federal government can control. Everything else belongs to the people. And at a state level, equivalent of is local control to the 10th Amendment. It's the traditional police powers. Local governments since the 1870s have had in their Constitution. They have the right to control their local health, safety, and welfare unless the state makes it a general state law.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we get into these problems, because they make it a general law, but then they give locals the power to do things like this. You also don't get vested rights. And that's one that I think we really have to focus on, because if you start in this process to get something that you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get there, and then at the last minute, some city council arbitrarily says, well, we're going to cut back to one. You guys are just shit out of luck. What do? That's the same thing out with Bill Costa, is that they have the right to go do much because the legislature took away that right they wanted by a statute. And so you run into the wall here. And, I'm pounding the drum here in California. We need to get locals out of this completely, totally. They can collect sales tax money for selling weed in the jurisdiction. Everything else, fuck you, get out of this and leave it alone because you're killing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And, Minnesota, we still have a project in Minnesota, and the local rules were just so hard to understand because they have no idea what they're doing. And then the city council can step in and limit stuff. Okay? And it creates these problems where with alcohol, in California, the state gives us a state alcohol license, and that license has value. I mean, my family had several. We sold them for $80,000 to $100,000 each.
Yeah.
Auction. Okay? You can't do that with a cannabis license because there's still not a vested right. Even with an annual license, it's renewed every year. Okay? And so when it's up for renewal, they say no. Now you got to start through the process of defending. You can lose your license for nonsensical shit.
Any thoughts on this, AJ, before we move to our final story?
No, my internet went out.
Oh,
Missed
okay.
The whole story.
All right. Well, we're glad you're back, AJ. We're glad you got it figured out over there. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just like the power you guys have rolling blackouts because you guys are under Democratic control over there in New York. So we understand. Yeah. And finally, our final story of the day, you guys. And I think I found a good story for you guys. Okay. I haven't had one for the rest of most of this week, but I think I found a good one. Because a co-author of Oklahoma's medical marijuana law says he's working on national descheduling plan at the behest of the Trump administration, you guys. That's right. Chip Paul, a longtime cannabis reform activist and co-author of Oklahoma's medical marijuana law, says he's working with a national coalition at the behest of the Donald J. Trump administration to push for the full descheduling of marijuana. Paul made the claim in response to a post on X where he argued that rescheduling marijuana really changes nothing other than research, pointing out that it would still be federally illegal and leave people incarcerated and fail to fix the banking issues. What we need to do is deschedule, he said. This fixes everything and it creates certainty, which is badly needed in the cannabis space. I totally agree with that. In a follow-up post, Paul responded to a comment stating deschedule is the only way, and by saying working on this now with a national team and at the behest of the Donald J. Trump administration. About all I can say at present, and we will have a press announcement soon, he says. In a post on X posted by Chip Paul, it reads, rescheduling really changes nothing other than research. Still federally illegal, gets no one out of jail, and does not fix banking. What we need to do is deschedule, and this fixes everything. It created certainty, which is badly needed in the cannabis space. And Paul is a prominent figure in the marijuana reform circles, particularly in Oklahoma, where he played a major role in crafting the successful 2018 initiative that legalized medical cannabis. He's known for his work on the endocannabinoid health and regulatory policy, and he leads an organization called GNU Pharma, focused on cannabinoid science and health products. His statement adds fuel to growing speculation that President Trump may soon support broader marijuana reforms, such as rescheduling or descheduling, and with many of his supporters and advisors endorsing nationwide reform in recent weeks. Further details are expected soon, and with Paul saying a formal announcement will come in the near future, we shall see, and we will make sure that we are covering it all here on High at 9 News, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. Someone saying Trump's going to deschedule. The liberals are going to go crazy. Their heads are gonna explode.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. See? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, let's get this done, please, so we can focus on other issues. Yay, deschedule. Yes. I think progress is a good thing. Let's get more intelligent people on that and working towards that instead of, celebrities endorsing rescheduling because they think that's the right idea. They don't really totally understand it.
They don't understand policy. They don't understand how things work or any of that. They're just.
They don't realize they're going to get knocked out. Like,
I see what you did there. That was cute.
A gift is a gift, no matter how cheap the wrapping paper is.
That's right. What do you think, Dale?
I'm a skeptic, but if they do it, I'll work to deschedule. I'm happy to work with whoever's going to do this. Mm-hmm. But frankly, I'm old and I'm a skeptic.
Yep. I think that's fair.
Too. But
I think skepticism is fair. I think that's fair. You know what I mean? Don't talk about it, be about it. Let's, you know what I'm saying? Let's talk the talk and walk the walk and not just, you know what I mean? Not just for the sake of, press releases and this and that.
I ask this though, as a non-conservative person, won't that lose the current conservative, presidency? Won't that lose them some conservative followers?
No.
Or how'd it work?
What do you mean? The only real conservative
say that it's, or if it comes down from the president and says it's okay,
no one is going to
okay to all his followers.
No one is going to falter. No Trump supporters are going to falter because Trump legalized cannabis. That's total BS propaganda. There may be a small percentage of crazy right-wing evangelical Christians that believe that it's the devil's lettuce that may say that they won't. But ultimately, Trump is doing so many other great things that they're just going to be like, oh, you know what? I didn't like that he did this, but he's doing so much other great things. I'm still going to support the guy. That's how that would play out.
It was a genuine question. No, thank you for that.
Yeah, anytime. I'm happy to help.
Right on that one, because there's other issues on the table. I think there's
way bigger things. Mm-hmm. Way bigger things on the chopping block. AJ, what do you think about this? Trump, this guy, he's working with the Trump administration to deschedule cannabis.
If it'll get people to stop asking him about Epstein, then it'll be good for him for a moment.
Oh man. That was good. That was good. Oh man. Well, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Aim High Hemp Distribution, Tested, and Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing today, you guys. Thank you all. And thank you all to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. And thank you, Cloud Media partners Elias and Kai somewhere in the metaverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.